Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 2000 historical fiction epic Gladiator. Are you not entertained? Uh, Gladiator to me personally is one of those films that I definitely do appreciate it. It's a film that I do like, but I don't love it. And I know it's a movie that has some really high marks for a lot of people. It gets like an 8.5 out of 10 on IMDb, gets countless 5-star ratings, 2 thumbs up. A lot of people even consider it to be one of their favorite films, and I think that's great. That's fantastic. There are things about this that I really like, but to me, Gladiator is one of those movies where it's a film that has great scenes and great moments, but it's not a great film overall. And I'll get to why I feel that way soon enough. But before I share more of my thoughts on Gladiator, I want to give a special shout out to Phil for requesting this review. And if there's another film, TV show, or topic that you would like to see me discuss in the future, feel free to donate to either my PayPal or to my Patreon. Link to both is in the video description down below, and I will try to get your request as soon as I possibly can. Now, Gladiator is directed by Ridley Scott, and I think for the most part, he did a remarkable job directing this film. I think it's definitely a high point of his career. I think he's done some better work in some other films in his filmography, like Blade Runner, for instance, but I'm not going to argue against people who think that this is peak Ridley Scott, because other than a few scenes where I felt he used a little bit too much quick cuts and shaky cam and unnecessary slow-mo, especially early on in the battle between Maximus's army and the barbarian horde in the forest. I don't really have a whole lot of problems with this direction. I think he did a good job with it in terms of setting up the shots with the framing, working with different sort of camera angles, utilizing wide shots as well as tighter up close shots, and definitely this is a film that has a significant amount of visual of style to it. It's a movie that definitely does um, provide some absolutely jaw-dropping visuals at points. Like it's a spectacle. Like when it comes to the sequences in the Colosseum, when it comes to the gladiator battles, they are the epitome of epic. And in large part it's due to how Ridley shot those scenes and just really emphasized the spectacle, which is what you need to do with a film about the gladiatorial games at the Colosseum. Like you need to have that spectacle, that sense of awe, and you definitely get that with Gladiator. And I think he also did a good job when it comes to the smaller moments that are just scenes between characters talking with one another or bonding, like like a Maximus and the other gladiators, or scenes that are supposed to be tense and more emotional. So overall, I do feel that this is some of Ridley's best work as a director. And I think he was definitely a major positive when it comes to his involvement in this film. I don't think it would be as good as it is without Ridley Scott being behind the camera. Um, Now, the screenplay by David Franzoni, John Logan, William Nicholson, that's where I feel this film falters a little bit. And I know I am in the minority here. I am a massive outlier when it comes to my take on this screenplay, but just hear me out. I do appreciate that at its core, it's a simple but effective tale of revenge. Because that's really what it is. It's Maximus getting revenge for the death of his wife and son. That's what this is all about. It's about him surviving the initial attack when Commodus and his men try to take him out, and him then becoming a gladiator and winning over the people, and then winning all these gladiatorial games, these instances of bloody and brutal combat, and then facing off against the emperor and triumphing and getting his revenge, but also reestablishing the order that the previous emperor wanted for Rome, and the dream that he had for Rome, which was to give Rome back to the people. So, at its core, it's a very simple, straightforward plot, and I do appreciate that. But it's not as compelling as I think it honestly could have been. For one, Maximus, he doesn't change that much as a character. And I know I've read some things that that's the intent, but it just makes for kind of a boring character when he's not involved in combat. When he's involved in combat and he's doing all these physical feats and is kicking ass and taking names and doing the whole "are you not entertained?" Like, it is entertaining, but that's not really because of Maximus as a character. It's because of what Maximus is doing. It's what Maximus is scripted to do in those particular moments. If you break Maximus down as a character, he's very one note. He's not really that compelling or that interesting. He starts out one way and then ends the same way at the end of the film. Now, I would have liked to have seen a little bit more dynamic with his character, a little bit more nuance, a little bit more layers. You don't really get that with Maximus. Also, he kind of comes across as foolish in the beginning. I'm going to turn down the hand of Commodus because I don't believe in him as emperor. But he does realize the consequences of that, right? If he turns down Commodus's hand, then he's going to suffer the consequences of that action. Maybe the better idea would be to take his hand and then find a way to take him out from the inside. But instead, he turns him down, and in a lot of ways is kind of directly responsible for the death of his wife and son. His wife and son probably would not have been dead if he just took the hand of Commodus and then decided, once he realizes that Commodus's empire is a mistake, to get a group of soldiers together or to work on a rebellion and so on and so forth. But there has to be a reason for him to become a slave and then for him to become a gladiator. And that's not really going to happen unless he does something as drastic as that. And speaking of the death of his wife and son, I don't really think the script did enough to really make that whole bit of drama and that loss really be that powerful and that impactful when it comes to the way that Maximus reacts to it. He seems, from what you see in the film, he seems to kind of get over it pretty quickly. Like, yeah, it's all about revenge, but you don't see those moments where he's breaking down in tears. You don't see those moments where he's really, really distraught. You get a little bit of that, when he goes to his home and he sees their bodies, and that's about it. But for something as devastating, you would think that there would be more of that, not less. And I guess maybe they thought, well, that would make his character look weak. No, it actually makes him stronger because he's willing to show these moments of vulnerability as well as be this strong, badass warrior. But you don't really get that with this character. That would have added some extra compelling elements to his character as well. It also doesn't help that Commodus is a very weak and forgettable villain. I know this is a very controversial take, but I genuinely feel that he's a weak and forgettable villain. The reason for that is that he is deliberately written to be weak. The guy's afraid of the dark. He's a grown-ass man, and he's afraid of the dark. And he does these things to be intimidating, like, yelling at Connie Nielsen's character, Lucilla, He's yelling at Lucilla and telling her that, am I not merciful? And he's trying to be intimidating in that way. And he's manipulative. In a lot of ways, he is like a snake, but he's not particularly good in combat. He doesn't do a lot of the stuff himself. He has his lackeys and all these other people do it for him. It sets him up in a pretty good spot initially when he's deranged enough to kill his own father, when he suffocates him to death. But then it just kind of falls off from there. He's afraid of the dark. He has all his lackeys do all his dirty work. And even in the finale, even when he goes up against Maximus, he deliberately wounds Maximus to the point where Maximus is at a significant disadvantage so he can win, but he still loses. He still gets his ass handed to him by a half-dead Maximus in what seems like maybe a couple minutes, if even that. He gets easily physically overpowered by Maximus, who is dying. It's not a good look, and I understand that's the whole point, but it just makes for a villain that's really weak. Take away these scenes of him going thumbs up and thumbs down. Take away some of these other moments where Joaquin Phoenix is acting in a way that's just completely over the top, and you have a villain that's not really that as strong or as compelling as the wide public or the variety the well, not the variety, the majority of people make him out to be. At least to me personally, I don't think he's that compelling or that strong of a villain. Have him do more of his own work. Have him actually put up more of a fight initially and kind of hand Maximus his ass. And then Maximus rises up and then takes him out. Why establish him as such a weak character, a weak antagonist? I think a good idea would actually to follow through on some things as well. Because another aspect of the film that's a little disappointing for me is the finale in general. Like, it seems like it's building up to a rather explosive, epic conclusion. And you don't get that. So it seems like you're going to get a battle between Maximus's army, his soldiers, after they've realized that their commander he's still alive, and they're going to band together and they're going to try to stop Commodus's reign, and they're going to get in a fierce battle with Commodus and his forces. But that never happens. Instead, the guy who's the lookout, who's supposed to help Maximus, he gets cornered, he gets killed, Maximus then gets captured again. So it's like, okay, you have all this build up, and then you just pull the rug out from underneath the audience and don't do anything with it. And then you get to the battle between Maximus and Commodus, and it's not really that exciting. It's not really that great of a battle. It looks good. It's got some nice visuals, but it's not really that memorable or that thrilling of a final confrontation because it's so one-sided. So why not give the audience the payoff? There actually is a battle between Maximus's army and Commodus's forces. But here's the twist. Commodus's army actually wins. So now you have a bit of unpredictability that's thrown in there, because I think that's why people like the ending, is because it's not typical. So they like it because it doesn't go the route that a lot of people would initially expect. And I understand that. And you could do that here, where Commodus's army wins. But instead of the finale taking place in the Colosseum again, after already having like at least 2 or 3 other scenes in the Colosseum up until that point, the final battle, the final fight between Commodus and Maximus happens at the site of the battle between Maximus's army and Commodus's forces. And the site is the same forest from the battle in the beginning of Gladiator. So now you have this poetic way to frame things in terms of the script. And I would continue with that, where Commodus would challenge Maximus, an exhausted Maximus who's just completely weary after, being in battle for so long. So Commodus challenges him to a fight to the death. They have this big battle. Commodus initially gets the upper hand and overpowers the weakened and weary Maximus, and he thinks he's killed him because he overpowers him with his superior fighting skills with the sword, and then stabs him in the stomach. Now he thinks that he's dead, but Maximus isn't dead yet. But Commodus is an arrogant jerk, so he just starts celebrating like he's won, and then Maximus rises up behind him as slowly and then knocks Commodus down from behind. And when Commodus tries to swipe with his sword, Maximus knocks it away. Then they get in a back and forth series of fisticuffs. They exchange blows with one another. Commodus is even cheating. He's like putting his fingers in Maximus's wounds. And it doesn't look good for Maximus. But Maximus is strong. Maximus is determined. He's driven to get his revenge. And he ultimately does find a way, despite everything that's going against him, despite his strength ebbing with each and every breath. He finds a way to physically overpower Commodus. And Commodus tries to go with one more swing of the sword, and he knocks it away again, and then breaks Commodus's arm, punches him in the solar plexus. Commodus then goes down to his knees, and Maximus is just repeatedly punching him in the face until he's a bloodied mess. And he's completely dazed now. Commodus is completely dazed and incapacitated, and that's when Maximus gets up from behind him and chokes the life out of him. And that's how Maximus kills Commodus. He kills Commodus the same way that Commodus rose to power in the first place when he killed Marcus. So that's another bit of poetic storytelling. And I think that would be really great. And it would fit the tone of the film very well. It would be a satisfying payoff. And I would still have, of course, the great scenes of Maximus in the afterlife, seeing his wife and kid. I love those scenes. I wouldn't change a thing when it comes to how they're written. And even the stuff with Lucilla and her speech, and Maximus before he dies, talking about how the slaves should be freed, and how they should honor Marcus's wishes of Rome being given back to the people. But instead of it just being people in the gladiatorial arena, the Colosseum, picking up his body, it's the combined forces of Maximus's army, the ones that are still alive after that battle, and Commodus's forces. They combine together and they carry Maximus's body on their shoulders. And then you have the camera then pans up, away from them carrying him away up into the sky, similar to how the film actually ends. And that's how I would conclude Gladiator. I think that would be a much more memorable, a much more compelling, and a much more satisfying conclusion, because the way that Gladiator ends, it's just kind of eh. It doesn't end on like a massive high note for me. I know it does for other people because they think that the emotion of it, in terms of Maximus's sacrifice and him dying and seeing his wife and kid in the afterlife and his speech, like that all is what makes that ending so compelling. And I'm like, that's part of it. But you can't tell me the final fight between him and Commodus is really that memorable or that strong. Other than just pure visuals, nothing about the choreography, nothing about the way that it plays out, nothing about that is really that uh, um, satisfying, except the moments when Maximus is just beating the ever loving shit out of him. But other than that, like, what is so satisfying about that final battle between the two? There's a lot of stuff that's going on in this script and this story that just kind of feels like they're dragging some stuff out. You know, with the whole drama involving a potential coup and the stuff involving Lucilla and her son Lucius. And I just would have liked to have seen more moments where Maximus is bonding with his fellow gladiators. There's some of that, but I don't think there's enough of that, to be honest. So the other gladiators don't feel as fleshed out as I think they should be. Other than maybe like Proximo. Like they try to do it with Juba, but Juba just doesn't really have a ton to do either. Like there's a little bit, but you still don't really get to know him that well. There's a little bit there in terms of character depth, but not a lot. So I would have liked to have seen more with the gladiators and Maximus and them bonding with one another. Um, but it's still a good script. I'm not going to sit here and say that it's a bad screenplay. I just think that it's a screenplay and a story that could be better. And I think enhancing and improving upon the climax, that would really help the film, as would some of the other things. Make Maximus more dynamic and interesting as a character, make his arc less of a flat line, have more scenes with the gladiators, and more than just like scenes with two of them. Let's get to know the other gladiators, not just, oh, there's one guy who's so scared he's pissed himself. Like, can we actually get a little bit more about these other gladiators, where they came from, why they are here, what they are fighting for, so on and so forth? Because it doesn't help that Ralph Moeller is a guy who gets a lot of screen time, who plays Hagen, and the guy can't, there's no dialogue. There's barely any dialogue with that guy because it's played by Ralph Moeller, who can't act. So, so it just feels like you have Djimon Hounsou's character when it comes to the gladiators, Juba, and that's it. The Senate stuff, not as interesting to me as the stuff involving the gladiators. I understand why it's there. You can cut down on that. Give me more stuff with the gladiators. Because it's called Gladiator. It's not called the Roman Senate. And like I said, make the character of Commodus into a legitimately fearsome and intimidating villain. Make him into a guy who's unpredictable, like he's crazy and wild, and that's why Marcus didn't trust him, because he's got some screws loose, and you get that initial feeling early on, but they don't really like fully commit to it. He'll have these moments of craziness, but he's just predictably weak and predictably cowardly, and that's all. That's the most consistent thing with his character. He's a coward. He doesn't want to fight. He doesn't want to do any of this. And when you have Maximus, who's kind of a flat line as a character, and then you have the villain who's also kind of a flat line in a different way, it just doesn't make things nearly as interesting or honestly as enjoyable to watch these two go head to head. So I definitely feel that that's something that could have been improved upon. I don't mind the stuff with Lucilla. I think that actually is fine, especially the whole stuff involving her being Maximus's former lover, and the whole dynamic between the two of them. And I really like the stuff with Proximo and his burgeoning friendship and mentorship with Maximus. And I also really like the stuff with Marcus that opened up the film. And It's a screenplay that definitely delivers when it comes to the spectacle. It delivers when it comes to the gladiator combat scenes, which is honestly probably the biggest selling point of the movie. Is those sequences, and it does not disappoint. I mean, a fun idea of bringing a undefeated gladiator out of retirement to fight Maximus. That's a really cool idea, and it's executed very well. And yeah, it's just a film that I like the idea. I like the setting. Like I said, I even don't mind the simple, straightforward plot, but I just feel that it's a little too lacking in some areas to be a genuinely great story, a genuinely great script, at least one that's consistently great and consistently good. It's got great scenes, it's got great moments, but I definitely don't think that it's a great script overall, but it definitely has some great moments and great quotes. I mean the famous scene where Maximus reveals himself to the emperor and then tells him that he's going to have his revenge is definitely one of the most memorable moments in the movie, and it is just absolutely iconic. My name is Maximus Decimus Meridius, commander of the armies of the North, general of the Felix legions, and loyal servant to the true emperor, Marcus Aurelius. Father to a murdered son, husband to a murdered wife, and I will have my vengeance in this life or the next. The script, like I said, could be better, and I honestly kind of feel the same way about the cast. And I know this is another opinion that is controversial, but I do these videos because I'm here to share my honest opinions. I don't do these videos to share the public opinion or what the consensus thinks. That's not what I'm here for. So if you disagree, that's cool, but like I just don't think that this cast overall is great either. I think you got a great headliner. I think Russell Crowe is amazing. Despite the fact that his character is kind of one note, he still makes this character into something that works. It's still a good performance because he brings this physicality and intensity to it that is uniquely his own. Like he just really becomes Maximus in a way that makes him into this larger than life, almost mythical figure because of how well he's doing the combat and cutting people's heads off with two swords and getting audiences to cheer his name and using his intelligence and his smarts and his experience as a military commander to work with the other gladiators to take out these other gladiator army, these Roman armies. It's not gladiators versus gladiators, but you get what I mean. You have these Romans that are tasked to play the good guys. Gladiators are the villains. They're supposed to lose. And Maximus is using his experience to train these other people who were never in combat, never really fought alongside him, to use these techniques to be able to persevere and to survive in the Colosseum. And I like that. And he's a very believable leader of men. And I definitely do feel that it's one of his better performances. So I 100% agree with the praise for Russell Crowe when it comes to his performance in the film as Maximus. Joaquin Phoenix, though, as Commodus, I thought he was a mixed bag. And I know this is a very controversial take, but that's honestly how I feel about it. I think his performance at points was good. At other points, it was a little too much histrionics. It was a little too much overacting. It was almost like he was acting like he was on a stage play and not for a film. This is very evident in his early scenes in the movie. Like when he is killing his father or when he's reacting and dealing with different sort of emotions and stuff after he's killed his father. Uh, that acting I thought was pretty bad. It's almost like he had to kind of get a feel for the character, and Ridley just wasn't willing to allow him to do more takes in that initial scene. So he just felt it was fine, but it's night and day if you ask me, because it starts out rough, then it starts to even out and gets better, but there's still some moments where he's just being over the top, and I get it. He's trying to have fun with the role, but there's not enough of that to make that the identity of the character. So if he was doing that consistently, then that's one thing, but he's not. So there's just these intermittent moments where he's chewing the scenery, and then there's these other moments where he's, you know, not doing that. So it just makes for a mixed bag of a performance. It really does. Not a popular opinion, but it's honestly how I feel about his performance in it. I think he's done a lot better in other films in his career than what he did here. But I do think that it's still at the end of the day a good performance. But I don't think it's a stunning performance like other people have made it out to be. But he does a good job playing this arrogant, cowardly figure. Does a great job with that, and he does bring some charisma and some demented charm at points to the character. I just would like to have seen more of that throughout, not just in spurts. Connie Nielsen as Lucilla, another mixed bag performance for me. At times, it's strong. At other times, it's just average. It also doesn't help either that her accent just comes and goes throughout the movie. And it seems to like change. Okay, she'll have like a more distinct accent in one scene, and then it'll be not as distinct in the next, or it won't even be there in a later scene. It just felt like the performance was just kind of uneven for me because of that. Like if all these actors who were trying to be somewhat consistent with their accents and everything, and Connie Nielsen is over here, and it's like just going in and out. At least that's my impression. That's what I got from her performance. It's not a bad performance. It's just inconsistent. And I did like Oliver Reed though. Oliver Reed in his last film role before he passed away as Proximo, like he was a lot of fun. He did bring a certain gruffness to the role that was nice, and he had the intensity still, and you could tell that he was really enjoying the opportunity to do this film and be a part of this big, massive production in what was going to be his final film role. And he went out with a bang, if you ask me. I think it was one of his best performances as Proximo. I also like Richard Harris as Marcus Aurelius. I thought he did a really magnificent job playing this character, this wise old man. He's this very wise figure. He definitely did portray that very well, and I felt he had some really good chemistry with Russell Crowe in the scenes that they had together. Like you really bought that he saw Russell Crowe and Maximus as his real son. Like you really did buy that dynamic between him and Russell Crowe. Derek Jacobi as Gracchus, he was fine. It really didn't really do a whole lot, but he was fine. Djimon Hounsou as Juba, he was good too, but like I said, not a ton of screen time, not a ton of things to do. Ralph Moeller, he was very good when it comes to scenes where he's doing some physical stuff, when he's fighting. Not so good when he has to speak or has to say that many lines of dialogue. I also want to mention Sven Ole Thorsen, who was the undefeated gladiator who came out of retirement. It was fun to see him, and he did a good job when it comes to the just portraying the physical nature of that character. Like you legitimately bought that this was an undefeated gladiator. Now, this is a guy who you shouldn't mess with, which made it all the more awesome when Maximus defeated him. So, yeah, it's not a bad cast. It's just not a cast that I think is tremendous. I think it's got some tremendous performances thrown in there. Russell Crowe, Oliver Reed, Richard Harris, but then some other performers who have some significant screen time, who are just kind of in the middle or inconsistent when it comes to their performances. The cinematography I thought was pretty effective. Definitely matched Ridley's desired look for the film very well. I felt that it had some good editing by Pietro Scalia, especially when it comes to the Gladiator sequences. The music by Hans Zimmer and Lisa Gerrard is absolutely spectacular. This is a great score, and this score, in my opinion, more than anything, is what makes this film as epic as it is. It's not the effects of the Colosseum. It's not the gladiator combat scenes with the blood and the carnage. It's not Russell Crowe or Joaquin Phoenix or these other people. They definitely do help a lot when it comes to this movie and this film working as well as it does. But if you take out this score, which in a lot of ways is the soul and the heartbeat of this movie, it's nowhere near as strong. It's nowhere near as special, and it's nowhere near as good because this score is just so well done in terms of providing like the right beats for the action scenes, as well as the right beats and the right instrumentals and choral work for the emotional scenes, for the scenes that are supposed to be evoking emotions of tragedy and sadness. And it just elevates the film to a level that it just would not be otherwise. So I do feel that Hans Zimmer and Lisa Gerrard just deserve a ton of credit for their work in this film. And so do the effects artists and the costume designers and the production designers and the art directors. Like, this is a film that definitely is a effective and for the most part good tribute to the old epics of yesteryear, like Spartacus and Ben-Hur. So, yeah, like I said, I don't love the movie, but I do like the film, and I do think it's still for the most part a really good film. I just think that in order for it to be truly spectacular, it just needed to be better in some areas. That's just my thoughts on Gladiator, and until next time, I'll see you later. See ya.